stop. Right now, you are one bad meeting, one frantic email, or one unexpected crisis away from utter meltdown. You think calm is a personality trait. You're wrong. Calm is a weapon, and you are about to learn how to forge it. Forget breathing exercises. Forget affirmations. This isn't about feeling calm, it's about being impenetrable. The world is going to throw chaos at you. The discipline to stay calm under fire is your armor, your shield, and your entire defense strategy. You want your power back? Then pay attention. Your transformation begins now. Chapter 1. The Panic Tax. Stop paying to be emotional. The first lesson is the hardest truth you will ever face. You are paying a tax to be reactive. It's an expensive tax. It's the panic tax. And right now, you're paying it in full, every single day, with no deductions, no exemptions, and no grace period. You're paying it with your energy. You're paying it with your money. You're paying it with your reputation. What is the panic tax? It's the direct cost of your emotional reactivity. Think about it. The client email arrives. It's harsh. It's unfair. What do? You feel the rush of adrenaline. You feel the surge of indignation. You fire back an immediate response, fueled by anger, demanding justification. That's an $80,000 contract lost. That's the panic tax. The stock market drops 5%. It's noise. It's volatility. But your gut screams sell. You panic. You liquidate at the bottom. The market corrects itself a week later. That's a 5-figure loss. That's the panic tax. You get into a simple argument with your partner. You could walk away. You could pause. But you unleash a verbal grenade, a low blow you immediately regret. That's trust shattered. That's a week of silence. That's the panic tax. It's not about the emotion itself. It's about the reaction. Stop paying the tax. Your feeling is just a feeling. It is a neurological event lasting maybe 90 seconds. Your reaction is a choice you make, often costing you years of effort. Calm is not the absence of emotion. Let's get that straight. You're not a robot. You will feel anger. You will feel frustration. You will feel fear. That's the key. The feeling is guaranteed. The reaction is not. Your core thesis for this book, for your life, is this: calm is the delay of reaction. That delay is the only variable you control. You think your boss's frantic tone is the problem. It's not. You think the screaming traffic is the problem. It's not. The problem is your immediate, unpaid, knee-jerk, catastrophic response to a neutral stimulus. You have a choice. You can let the alarm bell ring and instantly start running, or you can hear the alarm bell, wait 3 seconds, and then logically determine the fire's location. The vast majority of the time, the alarm is faulty. You need to quantify the cost. Look back at the last 3 major regrets in your life. Did they stem from slow, measured, deliberate decisions? Absolutely not. They came from high-speed, high-emotion, low-information reactions. A decision made under the influence of panic is always a decision you will pay for later. That's the panic tax. Stop paying the tax. It's not about being calm, it's about performing calmly. When I talk about discipline, I'm not talking about some soft, new age concept. I'm talking about a hard, practical, behavioral tool. The discipline to stay calm under fire means installing a single, non-negotiable mental circuit breaker. When the fire hits, pause. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to apologize for it. When the impulse hits, the urge to scream, to send the email, to storm out, you must create space. The space between the stimulus and your response is where your entire power lives. Everything else is just chaos. It's not about sensitivity, it's about discipline. The person who stays calm under fire is not someone who doesn't care. They are someone who cares more about the outcome than they do about indulging their temporary feelings. They recognize that reacting emotionally gives power to the aggressor, the market, or the circumstance. When you panic, you are handing over your power. You are saying, this external event is more capable of controlling my state than I am. That's the greatest expense of the panic tax. You need to understand the simple truth. You have a choice. Your first choice is always to recognize the tax collector standing in front of you, that immediate urge to fight, flee, or freeze. And your second choice is to refuse the payment. The professional does not flinch. The amateur reacts. The professional enforces the delay. The amateur pays the tax. From this moment on, your job is simple: delay the reaction. If you delay the reaction by 5 minutes, 90% of the emotional steam dissipates. If you delay the reaction by 1 hour, you gain all necessary clarity. If you delay the reaction by 24 hours, you gain full perspective and control. You don't have to wait that long, but you have to start with something. You don't need their permission to be steady. You don't need their permission to choose logic over alarm. This is your mental real estate, and you are the ultimate authority. Stop paying the tax. The disciplined person understands that their silence is louder than any shout. Their pause is more commanding than any hasty action. They have mastered the single most important skill, the discipline of delay. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. Every single time you enforce the pause, you withdraw power from the panic tax. Every single time you react, you are making an enormous withdrawal from your account. Stop paying to be emotional. Start investing in being impenetrable. You've learned the first step, identifying the cost and enforcing the delay. But delay is useless if you don't know what to do with that crucial newly won time. The biggest danger after the pause is justifying your coming chaos. You need to kill the excuses before they even form. In the next chapter, we eliminate the mental loopholes and self-pity that keep you trapped. We move from acknowledging the tax to abolishing the justification for it. Chapter 2, Eliminate the but. There is no justification for chaos. You paused. You didn't send the email. You didn't yell in traffic. Good. You withheld the payment of the panic tax. But now, the real enemy emerges. It's not the external pressure. It's the internal voice of justification. It whispers, "I reacted badly, but it was a catastrophic deadline. I lost my temper, but that person was deliberately rude. I panicked, but it was an urgent situation." That single 3-letter word but is the most expensive word in your entire vocabulary. It's the loophole. It's the escape clause. It's the mechanism you use to abdicate your personal power and keep your chaos alive. Your job in this chapter is to eliminate the but. There is no justification for chaos. There is no legitimate reason for losing control of your state. None. The external event is never the problem. The external event is neutral. The market crash is neutral. The client complaint is neutral. The fact of your current job loss is neutral. It's just data. Your internal interpretation is the chaos. Your frantic story about the data is what causes the meltdown. And the but is how you try to make your internal failure acceptable. Stop making excuses for a lack of discipline. You have a choice. You can cling to the story that your situation is uniquely difficult, or you can accept the truth. Pressure is universal. Calm is a choice. Consider the example of 2 high-pressure scenarios. Scenario 1, a Navy SEAL is conducting a mission. They are under actual, sustained fire. Their life is in immediate physical danger. Their team's success depends on perfect, synchronized execution. Does the SEAL get to say, "But I'm stressed"? No. If they panic, people die. They execute the process. They anchor to the discipline. They control their breathing. They act. Scenario 2, you are stuck in a traffic jam. You are late for a meeting. Your boss might be angry. You start slamming the wheel, shouting at the radio, letting your internal frustration boil over into physical, visible chaos. The level of actual danger is 0. The level of perceived internal threat is sky high. And you justify your meltdown with, "But the traffic was insane." Eliminate the but. The SEAL operates under maximum pressure and maintains absolute calm because they have trained their response. You operate under minimum pressure and brake because you have trained your reactivity. It's not about external difficulty, it's about internal discipline. That's the key. 100% ownership of your emotional state. The moment you use the word but, you are saying, the world is more powerful than my discipline. You are saying, I am a victim of circumstance. The disciplined person, the person who stays calm under fire, knows this is a lie. They know that even when the situation is genuinely bad, a genuine crisis, not a traffic jam, their ability to respond effectively increases in direct proportion to their ability to remain cool. What do you gain by adding chaos to a crisis? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You gain foggy thinking, poor judgment, wasted energy, and a higher panic tax. Your instruction is simple: intercept the justification. The second your mind starts formulating the excuse, the second it says, I have a right to be angry because, you have to shut it down with a simple declarative statement: this is just data. I will not justify my chaos. You have a choice. You can indulge the emotional relief of the explosion, or you can retain the power of silence. You don't need their permission to be steady. You need to stop granting yourself permission to be volatile. Every time you say, but I was tired, or but I was hungry, or but this was the last straw, you are sacrificing your personal sovereignty on the altar of temporary comfort. You are making your life smaller. You are guaranteeing that the next small stressor will break you too. A person who accepts 100% ownership doesn't get angry at the bad news. They get busy analyzing the bad news. It's not about being perfect, it's about being effective. Effective people do not waste mental bandwidth on excuses. They treat the external event as a math problem. If a formula is wrong, you don't scream at the formula. You calmly isolate the variable and fix it. You apply the same cold logic to your life. The next time a crisis hits, use this mental drill. Stop, enforce the 3-second delay, as we learned in Chapter 1. Identify, what is the emotion? Anger? Fear? Shame? Intercept, listen for the but. But this is too much. But they started it. Declare, forcefully state, eliminate the but. This is my response to own. You don't need their permission to control your internal environment. You are the sovereign ruler of your mind. Stop letting external events stage a coup. The difference between the person who breaks and the person who stays calm under fire is purely a matter of mental framing. One person says, this bad thing happened to me. I must react. Victimhood. The other person says, this bad thing happened. This is the new reality. How do I act now? Ownership. That's the key. Ownership is the cure for panic. It's not about emotional repression, it's about disciplined redirection. You're not bottling up the emotion, you are recognizing it, honoring its presence for 3 seconds, and then redirecting all that energy toward the solution. The energy of panic, when harnessed, becomes the energy of focused intensity. The moment you eliminate the but, you step out of the victim role and into the agent role. You move from feeling the problem to solving the problem. And guess what solves problems? Calm, cold, focused effort. You want to be known as the unflappable anchor, the steady hand, the person who gets the call when everything is on fire. You achieve that reputation not by pretending you're never stressed, but by consistently refusing to use that stress as an excuse for your poor performance. Eliminate the but. Own the reaction. Own the control. You've learned that the external event is not the problem, and the but is not an acceptable justification. You've accepted 100% ownership of your state. This is crucial. Now, we need to talk about the physical gateway to your control. We need a non-negotiable instantaneous anchor that you can deploy when the fire is at its hottest. We need the physical firewall that guarantees you the mental space required to execute this discipline. Chapter 3. The 3-second rule. Your instantaneous crisis firewall. You now know the enemy, the panic tax and the corrosive weakening power of the word but. You accept 100% ownership of your state. That's the mindset. Now you need the mechanism. When the crisis hits, when the fear spikes, when the email lands, you need an instantaneous firewall. You need a tool that is simple, non-negotiable, and deployable in a fraction of a second. This is the 3-second rule. It is the only physical technique you require to master the discipline of calm. It is simple, which is why most people will dismiss it. But simplicity is the essence of strength under fire. Complexity breaks down. 3 seconds never fails. Here is the instruction. It is not optional. It is not negotiable. The instant you feel the rush, the adrenaline, the heat, the flush of panic or rage, you must deploy a mental lockdown. You stop all motion. You stop all speech. You stop the hand from reaching for the keyboard. And you say internally, lock it down for 3. The goal is to physically, mentally, and emotionally halt the immediate, catastrophic momentum. The countdown is precise. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. The first second is the shock. The 1 Mississippi is the moment you feel the impulse, the volcanic urge to react. You intercept it. You recognize it. You give the impulse a name. This is anger. This is fear. This is self-pity. You don't try to stop the feeling. You just name it. You acknowledge the fire exists. The second is the stabilization. The 2 Mississippi is where you draw a hard line. You refuse to let the feeling transition into an action. You refuse the impulse. You visualize a locked door between your feeling and your hand, your mouth, or your brain's processing. You are separating the impulse from the execution. You have a choice. The third second is the pivot. The 3 Mississippi is where you initiate the transfer of energy. You pivot from emotional thinking to cold analysis. You use the last moment of the count to ask one single piercing question. What is the single best next action, regardless of how I feel right now? That's the key. 3 seconds of forced, deliberate, conscious delay. It's not about perfection of thought, it's about enforcement of the pause. Why 3 seconds? Because 3 seconds is long enough to break the circuit. Your default, catastrophic reaction is driven by a primitive, fast-acting part of your brain. It runs on momentum. It requires no conscious thought. It's an instant loop. 3 seconds is the exact amount of time required for your rational, problem-solving, disciplined brain to kick in and seize control. The fire goes out instantly if you cut off the fuel. Your immediate reaction is the fuel. Lock it down for 3 and the fuel line is severed. Think of an elite fighter pilot. They are moving at extreme speed, G-forces pushing their body to the limit, alarms blaring. If they panic, they die. They don't try to feel better. They don't try to be calm. They fall back on their checklist. They execute the required, non-negotiable, pre-programmed actions. 3 seconds is your emergency checklist. You don't need their permission to use the 3 seconds. You don't need to explain it. No one else even needs to know you did it. You are simply installing a personal firewall against external chaos. It's not about ignoring the problem. It's about isolating the solution. Most people think, the building is burning, I must rush out screaming. The disciplined person thinks, the alarm is sounding. I have 3 seconds to locate the nearest exit and start walking. 3 seconds of delay allows you to transition from the catastrophe narrative to the action plan. Let's apply this to a real-world scenario. Your phone rings. It's a number you don't know. You answer it. A frantic voice says your largest account is pulling out immediately because of a mistake you made last week. Fire breaks out. The immediate impulse is terror, defensiveness, and a racing heart. Action: you slam the phone down and start pacing, or you start apologizing profusely, confirming their guilt before you even know the facts. The disciplined response. You feel the panic. You recognize it. You say, lock it down for 3. 1 Mississippi, you are listening to the frantic voice, but you are not reacting. You are naming the emotion, fear of consequence. You take one hard, sharp breath. 2 Mississippi, you create the firewall. You allow the voice to talk, but you are not allowing their hysteria to penetrate your decision-making center. You are refusing to accept their stress. 3 Mississippi, you seize control. You speak, I hear you. I understand the gravity of this. I need to look at the specifics. I will call you back in 30 minutes with a precise action plan. Click. You did not solve the problem in 3 seconds. That's not the goal. You secured your position in 3 seconds. You moved from being a victim of the news to the director of the response. You refused to pay the panic tax. That's the key. The power of the disciplined mind is not in speed, but in steadiness. Every time you execute the 3-second rule, you are reinforcing the circuit. You are training your brain that the immediate impulse is no longer the authority. You are teaching your nervous system that you are in control of the switch. It's not about being unfeeling, it's about being effective. The problem you face, whether financial, professional, or personal, is always easier to solve when you approach it with a calm, surgical detachment. When you react immediately, you only make the problem worse. The 3-second delay is the moment you choose intelligence over instinct. You have a choice. You can let the impulse control you, or you can use 3 seconds to control the impulse. The cost of failing this test is the continuation of chaos. The reward for executing it is absolute control over your state. Lock it down for 3. Make it your non-negotiable mental habit. This rule creates the necessary gap. But what do you do with the newfound silence after those 3 seconds? You still have the fire. You simply paused your reaction. The next mistake people make is that they start weaving a catastrophic story. They amplify the crisis internally. You must stop this. You've mastered the delay. Now you must master the interpretation. In the next chapter, we will learn how to rip the emotion out of the event and reduce every fire to its bare, neutral facts. Chapter 4. Kill the narrative. Your crisis is just data. You have the mechanism. You have the discipline to lock it down for 3. You've mastered the pause. But what happens in the silence after the 3-second firewall? For most people, the panic simply reloads. They use that space not for analysis, but for catastrophic storytelling. They take a neutral event and immediately dress it up in the costume of disaster. They turn a fact into a feeling. This is the most fundamental self-sabotage. It is the core engine of anxiety. Panic is caused by assigning a catastrophic story to simple, neutral data. Your job now is to become a ruthless, detached observer of your own life. You must strip the event of its emotional narrative. Your repetitive mantra for this entire chapter is, "It is just data." Let's be brutally honest. You do not have a problem. You have a set of facts requiring a logical response. When you fail to make this distinction, you start paying the panic tax all over again. Consider the common disaster, a layoff. The narrative, the panic tax, I was fired. This means I am a personal failure. This proves I'm not good enough. My entire career is over. I'll never find another job. My family will suffer. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. That is pure, corrosive panic. It's an emotional narrative built on assumption and self-pity. This narrative immediately paralyzes you. It triggers shame and despair. It keeps you on the couch. The data, the discipline of calm, accompany reduced headcount, and my specific role was eliminated. My income source has stopped. My savings account holds X dollars. My marketable skills are Y and Z. The immediate action required is to update my resume and contact 3 recruiters. It is just data. Notice the difference. The data requires action. The narrative demands worry and suffering. You have a choice. You can indulge the emotional relief of the self-pitying story, or you can retain the power of cold, objective analysis. This is the key. You do not have a problem. You have a data input. The world is constantly feeding you information. Most of it is neutral. Your interpretation makes it either a devastating crisis or a manageable challenge. The disciplined mind chooses the latter, always. You don't need their permission to see the facts clearly. You need to stop granting yourself permission to invent a disaster movie around those facts. When the fire breaks out, the first step after the 3-second delay is to write the data card. Physically, mentally, or digitally, list out the facts as if you were reporting to someone who had no emotional stake in your life: a financial analyst, a military commander, a surgeon. Fact 1. The email contains a threat of litigation. Fact 2. The client did not pay the invoice by the due date. Fact 3. My car made a concerning noise. Now, look at those 3 facts. They are dry. They are solvable. They contain no emotional charge. The moment you start adding adjectives like terrible, unbelievable, or catastrophic, you are paying the panic tax. Eliminate those adjectives. It's not about ignoring your feelings. It's about disobeying your feelings. Feelings are indicators. They are not instructions. When the temperature gauge in your car hits red, you don't start screaming at the car, calling it a failure, and panicking about the future. You observe the data and shut the engine off. You then calmly seek a solution. Apply this exact, cold logic to your internal world. Your fear is spiking. Data input, high fear. Response, initiate 3-second rule and data card. Do not, under any circumstances, allow the fear data point to dictate your next action. You are the commander, not the temperature gauge. It's not about emotional repression, it's about cognitive dominance. Your greatest asset under fire is your ability to think clearly. Panic is the only thing that steals that asset. By killing the narrative and focusing only on data, you protect your single most valuable resource, your processing power. Think about the difference between two people receiving a critical piece of feedback. Person A, my boss hates me. This review means I'm going nowhere. I can't handle this pressure. I should probably start looking for an easier job. The narrative, retreat and collapse. Person B, the review stated I need improvement in X, Y, and Z areas. This is a skills gap. What are the 3 courses or books I can use to close X? What is the deadline to show improvement on Y? The data, identify and attack. You have a choice. Be person A, the victim of a story, or be person B, the architect of a solution. The true power of the disciplined observer is that they achieve instant de-escalation. When you look at the facts, when you realize the entire crisis is just a set of variables waiting to be manipulated, the emotional urgency collapses. It is just data. The facts are not scary. Your imagination about the facts is scary. You don't need their permission to be steady. You need to give yourself the command to stop inventing fiction. This is how you train yourself. The trigger, a stressor arrives. The firewall, lock it down for 3. The filter, kill the narrative. Ask, if I had to explain this situation in 5 emotion-free bullet points to a stranger, what would they be? The declaration, state the phrase, it is just data. This requires an action, not a feeling. Every single time you catch yourself saying, this is awful, or I can't believe this, you are slipping. You are paying the tax. Stop. Replace the word awful with the word fact. The disciplined person understands that their energy is finite. They refuse to waste it on the useless, destructive work of worry and catastrophic storytelling. They save all their energy for the only thing that matters, the solution. You are training yourself to be the silent, steady force in the room. The person who doesn't shout, doesn't panic, but simply asks the one clear, piercing question that cuts through the noise. You have mastered the delay, and you have mastered the data. You now know how to create the space and how to frame the situation. But what do you do when the chaos is constant? When the fires keep popping up? You can't live in a permanent state of crisis management. You need a stable anchor. You need the routines that make chaos irrelevant. In the next chapter, we move from the momentary crisis response to the long-term strategic defense. We build the fortress that makes you unbreakable. Chapter 5, The Power of Monotony, Predictable Action, Unpredictable Results. You have the pause. You have the clarity to see the facts. But you are still relying on willpower to execute your calm response. Willpower is a finite resource. It runs out when you need it most. We must stop relying on the moment and start building the foundation. Your foundation is built in the mundane. It is constructed in the boring. It is forged in the utterly predictable. This chapter is about the power of monotony. You stay calm under fire by anchoring yourself to a predictable, boring, daily discipline. These are the small, non-negotiable tasks you execute flawlessly, regardless of external conditions. Your mantra for this entire chapter is, anchor to the routine. When the macro world, your career, your finances, your relationships, is spinning out of control, you must deliberately turn inward to the micro consistency of your process. That consistency is your mental fortress. It's not about finding peace, it's about building structure. Look at the absolute elite. Look at the people who perform flawlessly when the stakes are life and death. They do not rely on sudden bursts of inspiration or heroism. They rely on repetition. Navy SEALs do not suddenly become disciplined when the helicopter lands in a hostile zone. Their discipline is already an ingrained, automated habit. They find their anchor in the routine of cleaning their weapon until it gleams, checking their gear precisely the same way every time, running the same drills under the same pressure. When the real chaos hits, their mind doesn't waste a single calorie on what to do next. It executes the established routine. Your routine is your battlefield armor. What are your routines? Are they based on what feels good, or what builds resilience? The disciplined person understands that monotony breeds mastery. Predictable action yields unpredictable, superior results. You have a choice. You can let your day be dictated by the last email you read or the last thought you had. Or you can execute your essential sequence first. It's not about being excited to work, it's about committing to the process. Your transformation happens in the 5 a.m. alarm, the cold shower, the first page written, the single planned healthy meal, the 5 minutes of intentional silence before you check your phone. These are not optional self-care items. They are mental calisthenics. They condition your mind to obey your command, not the environment's demand. You don't need their permission to establish this routine. You don't need their approval for your structure. This is internal sovereignty. Anchor to the routine. If you let the small things slide, if you skip your morning preparation because you felt tired, you are telling your subconscious mind that your word to yourself is weak. When the major fire breaks out, your subconscious will assume you are still weak, and you will revert to panic. Every morning, you must win the first 3 battles before you even step into the world's fight. The wake-up battle, you rise at the appointed time. No negotiation. The self-care battle, you complete the required physical or mental priming task, meditation, movement, planning. The clarity battle, you write down the single most important thing that must get done today, the one thing that moves the needle. These small victories are not about generating peace. They are about generating momentum and proof of concept. You are proving to yourself, under zero pressure, that you can be controlled, deliberate, and unfaltering. When the massive external event hits, the sudden audit, the huge project failure, you won't break because your internal command structure is solid. You already know how to execute under pressure because you've been practicing on low-stakes pressure all week. It's not about perfection in the routine, it's about consistency in the effort. If you miss a day, you don't spiral. That's the old mindset. The disciplined mindset is, 1 missed day is a data point. 2 missed days is a choice. I choose the routine. You immediately get back on the track. Anchor to the routine. Your output under crisis is a direct reflection of your output under normal conditions. The powerful person is the one who acts predictably in their preparation so they can act decisively in their response. They generate unpredictable results for everyone else because their foundation is solid while everyone else is improvising. This is how you generate power, not just peace. Peace is passive. Power is active. Consistency is active. When you anchor to the routine, you are preloading your system for calm. You are ensuring that when the stimulus hits, your system defaults to action, not reaction. You have the discipline to pause, Chapter 3. You have the discipline to analyze, Chapter 4. Now you have the discipline to build the structure that supports all future calm, Chapter 5. But structure alone isn't enough. Sometimes, the noise of the external crisis, the frantic demands from others, the conflicting reports, is overwhelming, even if you've analyzed the data correctly. You must learn to tune out the static. The next stage is about eliminating everything that is not essential to the solution. It is about radical focus when the stakes are highest. Chapter 6, The Emergency Checkout. Don't live in the problem. You have your discipline. You lock it down for 3. You kill the narrative by focusing only on data. You anchor to the routine to build your foundation. But the fire is still raging. And here is where most people make the fatal mistake. They live in the problem. They check in emotionally, And they never check out. They let the crisis become their personality. They let the worry become their full-time occupation. They confuse passive distress with active work. This is self-indulgence masquerading as responsibility. And you are here to practice discipline, not drama. Your command for this chapter is, set the deadline for distress. The problem itself is difficult enough. You don't need to volunteer your life as a casualty of it. You must establish a hard mental boundary, an emergency checkout, that dictates when the worry stops and the work begins. Worry and analysis are not the same thing. They are enemies. Worry is passive, circular, and useless. It's reviewing the past failure and inventing future catastrophes. It's paying the panic tax by draining energy with no return. Analysis is active, linear, and useful. It's using the data to generate the next small, precise action. It's an investment in the solution. The disciplined person refuses to confuse the two. That's the key. You have a choice. You can stay perpetually checked in to the emotional crisis, or you can force yourself to check out and move on to the solution. When disaster strikes, you must allocate a specific, non-negotiable 15-minute window for processing the disaster. Not indulging it. Processing it. This is your distress deadline. Here is the instruction. When the major fire hits, the lawsuit, the layoff, the betrayal, you must enforce the firewall, lock it down for 3. State the data, write the data card, Chapter 4. Set the deadline. You announce internally, I have 15 minutes to feel the weight of this, to complete my data review, and to determine the very first, smallest action. During those 15 minutes, you are allowed to feel the anger, the fear, the frustration. You are allowed to review the facts, gather the input, and understand the scope of the problem. This is a controlled burn. But the moment the 15 minutes are up, the moment the clock hits 0, you must pivot. Mandatory pivot. You are no longer allowed to worry. You are no longer allowed to rehearse the catastrophe. You are now mandated to pivot to a solution-focused action, no matter how small. It's not about ignoring the pain, it's about honoring the clock. If the problem is a massive debt, the solution-focused action might be, research 3 debt consolidation services. If the problem is a major relationship conflict, the action might be, write down 2 things I will not say and 1 thing I will propose. The action is irrelevant in size. Its relevance is in its function. It breaks the cycle of worry. It moves you from passive victimhood to active agency. You don't need their permission to stop worrying. You don't need the universe to signal that it's okay to feel better. You set the deadline for distress. You are the authority. If you don't enforce this checkout, you become a refugee in your own crisis. You live on the mental street corner, constantly talking about the problem, rehearsing the narrative, and draining your energy. That's the panic tax on repeat. It's not about being insensitive, it's about being strategically strong. The disciplined person understands that the human mind defaults to rehearsing worry because it gives a false sense of control. If I worry about it enough, maybe I can outsmart it. This is a lie. Worrying is not solving. Once you have a plan, even a tiny single-step plan, you have done the hard work. The moment you have a plan, you are no longer allowed to worry. Worry is the process before the plan. Once the plan exists, worry is a betrayal of your discipline. You have a choice. You can let the crisis occupy 100% of your mental space, or you can confine it to a 15-minute window of cold, hard analysis. Think about a surgeon. When a massive trauma patient rolls into the ER, the surgeon has 15 minutes to assess the data, the vitals, the injuries, the necessary immediate procedures. After that 15 minutes, they don't retreat to the corner to worry about the patient's prognosis. They start cutting. They execute the plan. They do the work. You are the surgeon of your own life. Set the deadline for distress. The rule is this: if you are not actively, physically, or mentally generating a solution, if you are just turning the problem over and over in your mind, you are violating the emergency checkout. You are paying the panic tax. This is your tool for high-stakes, long-duration chaos. Small stressors get cut off by the 3-second rule. Large, compounding crises require the distress deadline. It forces you to respect your own mental capacity and reserve it only for productive action. Every time you pivot from worry to action, you are training your mind to be future-focused. You are redirecting the energy of fear into the energy of forward momentum. It's not about running from the facts, it's about running toward the solution. You are the person who does not live in the problem. You visit the problem, you analyze the data, you formulate the plan, and you check out. You return your focus to the micro-consistency of your routine, Chapter 5, executing your plan one single step at a time. You have now established the full strategic defense, the pause, the data analysis, the routine anchor, and the hard emotional boundary. But even the calmest person can feel their resolve waver when the pressure intensifies, when the stakes go up. You need to stop viewing pressure as a threat and start viewing it as a tool. You must change your fundamental relationship with difficulty. In the next chapter, we will turn the tables on the fire. We will use the very things that pressure you as the fuel for your performance. Chapter 7. Reverse the trap. Make pressure your fuel. You've built the structure. You enforce the pause. You kill the narrative. You anchor to the routine. You set the deadline for distress. But the pressure is rising. The deadline is looming. The stakes are immense. Your body is tight. Your mind screams, "I need this to stop." This is the moment of truth. Most people see this pressure as a destroyer. They see it as a sign of imminent failure. They retreat. They crumble. They pay the panic tax. The disciplined person reverses the trap. They recognize that the things that pressure you are the very things that define your growth and success. Pressure is not a destroyer. It is a refiner. Your mantra for this chapter is, pressure reveals, it doesn't break. When the heat is on, your character, your preparedness, and your discipline are revealed. They are not destroyed. They are simply put on display. If you break, it's because the internal structure was already weak. The pressure just exposed the flaw. You have a choice. You can run from the pressure and remain small and safe, or you can embrace the pressure and allow it to forge you into something stronger. That's the key. Rewire your brain's association with stress. Stress is not the enemy. Stress is a signal. It is the signal that you are operating at the absolute edge of your current capability. It means you are playing a bigger game. It means you are growing. You don't need their permission to feel the stress. You need to accept it as an enhancement, not an attack. Think about carbon. Under zero pressure, it remains soft, black, useless graphite. Apply immense, sustained pressure, and that carbon refines itself. It transforms. It becomes the hardest substance on Earth, diamond. You are carbon. The pressure is the forge. It's not about eliminating the stress, it's about redirecting the energy. When pressure spikes, it releases massive raw energy into your system. Adrenaline, cortisol, sharpened focus. The undisciplined person lets this energy turn inward and become anxiety, leading to paralysis and chaos. The disciplined person immediately captures and funnels that energy outward, directing it into focused, precise action. You have a choice. Energy wasted on worry, or energy used for work. Look at two identical people facing an impossible deadline, say, 48 hours to complete a task that should take a week. Person A, the panic taxpayer, they see the deadline as an existential threat. They waste 12 hours procrastinating, complaining, justifying their chaos. They operate under a constant fog of self-pity and fear. They ultimately fail or deliver a substandard product, blaming the insane pressure. They paid the panic tax. Person B, the disciplined refiner, they see the deadline as a performance enhancer. They immediately lock it down for 3. They accept the data, 48 hours remaining. X amount of work. They embrace the tightness in their chest as a surge of energy, a fuel injection. They enter a flow state of ruthless prioritization and focus. They achieve peak performance, not despite the pressure, but because of it. Pressure reveals, it doesn't break. Person B's pre-existing discipline was simply revealed and amplified. You don't need their permission to be a diamond. You need to accept the heat. Your instruction is to adopt the embrace the grind mindset the second the pressure arrives. Acknowledge the signal. When the stress response hits, the heart rate rising, the tunnel vision, you must internally declare, this is the signal. I am now entering peak performance mode. Redirect the energy. Force the energy of the fear into the very next physical action. If you feel panic, you channel that raw intensity into typing faster, speaking clearer, or analyzing the data card more meticulously. Reject the but. Do not allow the justification. No, but this is too much. Your only thought is, this is exactly what I need to perform at my highest level. Eliminate the but. It's not about enjoying the difficulty, it's about demanding the growth. Every time you embrace the pressure, you are stretching your capability boundary. You are teaching your nervous system that intense pressure is not a threat to be avoided, but a cue to engage. The disciplined person actively seeks responsibility. They seek the pressure points. Why? Because they know that those points are the only places where true power and reputation are forged. The person who stays calm under fire is the one who has trained themselves to run toward the heat, not away from it. You have a choice. You can be the weak link that collapses, or you can be the anchor that holds firm. The fire is not trying to burn you. The fire is trying to shape you. Pressure reveals, it doesn't break. Use that phrase every time the stress starts to spike. Use it to remind yourself that the feeling of difficulty is a sign that the transformation is actively occurring. This is how you turn a destructive trap into your most powerful fuel source. You reframe stress from an obstacle into an engine. You have secured the internal structure and embraced the pressure. But sometimes the greatest source of chaos isn't the main problem. It's the sheer deafening volume of secondary noise, the frantic emails, the conflicting advice, the demands of the non-essential. You must become a master filter, ruthlessly silencing everything that doesn't matter. In the next chapter, we will learn how to identify and neutralize the distracting static so you can put 100% of your focused, disciplined energy on the one thing that counts. Chapter 8. The Noise of the Non-Essential. Ignore the sideshow. You are now equipped. You embrace pressure as fuel. You refuse to live in the problem. You anchor to the routine. But when the fire hits, it is never clean. It is rarely a single, contained problem. It is usually a sideshow. The real crisis is buried under layers of irrelevant detail, frantic emails, conflicting advice, and the emotional hysteria of everyone around you. Most of the things that generate your panic are not the core fire, but the noise of the non-essential. Your job is not to manage the whole disaster. Your job is to ignore 95% of it. Your repetitive command for this chapter is, silence the noise. When chaos strikes, the undisciplined person feels compelled to respond to everything. The phone rings, they answer. The email lands, they reply instantly. The colleague panics, they join the panic. They become a casualty of the sheer volume of the disaster. They pay the panic tax through mental exhaustion and distraction. You have a choice. You can let yourself be pulled apart by every peripheral issue, or you can become a ruthless, focused filter. That's the key. Your only job is to identify the single most critical domino in the entire collapsing structure and focus 100% of your energy only on that one piece. Everything else is noise. It's not about being unsympathetic, it's about being surgical. Imagine a company facing a major public relations disaster. The core problem is one faulty product and one key regulatory error. The noise, 10 contradictory news articles. 50 panicked internal emails demanding status updates. The CEO's spouse sending frantic texts. Social media hate that spikes every hour. 3 lawyers sending 3 different, confusing pieces of advice. The disciplined mind does not touch any of that. The disciplined person says, silence the noise. They focus only on, what is the root cause regulatory error, and what is the single document required to prove compliance. Everything else is a distraction. You don't need their permission to ignore the sideshow. You need to give yourself the command to disengage from the panic of others. The anxiety of other people is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to maintain the steady state required to execute the solution. Their panic is often contagious. It wants to pull you into their emotional debt. You must enforce the mental quarantine. When the fire breaks out, The disciplined person does this. Isolate the source. After you lock it down for 3, you ask, where is the physical, factual root of this fire? Is it a spreadsheet error? A missed deadline? A single harsh statement? Identify the one thing that, if solved, makes everything else easier. Filter the communication. You immediately mute notifications. You stop reading the 10 frantic emails. You only seek the one crucial piece of data that moves the needle. Everything else is relegated to a folder named non-essential noise for review after the critical domino has been addressed. Refuse the urgency of others. Others will try to rush you. They will impose their frantic, non-essential deadlines on your calm process. You must resist. Your priority is clarity and precision, not speed dictated by their fear. It's not about avoiding communication, it's about demanding quality. When you communicate during a crisis, your words must be the calmest, clearest, and most decisive in the room. You refuse to enter the frantic circular discussion. Your contribution is always, here are the facts. Here is the single next step. You have a choice. You can be the thermometer, constantly changing with the temperature of the room. Or you can be the thermostat, setting the steady, disciplined temperature. The cost of engaging the noise is immense. Every email you read that doesn't contain the solution is mental energy wasted. Every panicked conversation is a contribution to the panic tax. Silence the noise. Your focus is your most valuable currency under fire. Think of a pilot guiding a plane through a sudden, severe storm. The cockpit is filled with flashing lights, confusing alarms, and the shouts of the flight crew. If the pilot responds to all of it equally, the plane crashes. The highly trained pilot knows the primary checklist. They know that 90% of the inputs are redundant or secondary. They focus only on the few essential controls required to maintain the flight path. The essential controls are your data points and your next single action. You don't need their permission to maintain focus. You need to enforce the boundary of your own attention. It's not about being rude, it's about being effective. The disciplined person understands that the solution is usually simple, but the path to finding it is cluttered by complexity. Your clarity is your greatest service to others. By ignoring the sideshow, you deliver the speed and precision everyone actually needs, even if they don't realize it. Silence the noise. This is how you turn your focus into a weapon. You are not diffused. You are not fragmented. You are a laser beam directed at the single weak point of the crisis. You have mastered the process of focusing on the essential and ignoring the noise. You now possess the tools for a world spinning with external chaos. But there is one final internal hurdle that can still collapse the entire structure: the paralyzing fear of failure. If you see failure as a catastrophic endpoint, you will hesitate, you will delay, and you will panic. You must inoculate yourself against this fear. You must neutralize failure itself. In the final preparatory chapter, we will change your entire relationship with mistakes and outcomes, transforming failure from an emotional verdict into a neutral required step. Chapter 9. Failure is neutral, the ultimate de-escalator. You are almost complete. You have the external strategy, the pause, the structure, the focus. You have the internal drive, the acceptance of pressure as fuel. But there is one final silent internal killer that can undermine all your discipline: the paralyzing fear of failure. The moment you perceive that your next action might result in a mistake, a loss, a judgment, a failure, your brain throws itself into a panic state. It screams, stop, retreat, avoid the judgment. This fear is the engine of all hesitation, all procrastination, and all explosive defensive reactions. If you treat failure as a catastrophic personal verdict, you will never be truly calm under fire. You will always be fighting the fear of the outcome, instead of focusing on the process. Your job now is to inoculate yourself. Your job is to achieve ultimate de-escalation. Your mantra for this chapter is: failure is neutral. Failure is not a moral judgment. It is not an indictment of your character. It is not a final state. It is a data point. It is a result. Nothing more. You have a choice. You can let the fear of failure immobilize you, forcing you to pay the panic tax of inaction. Or you can embrace the neutrality of the outcome, freeing you to act with clarity and speed. That's the key. The true crisis is inaction, not mistake-making. The person who is completely calm under fire is simply the one who has detached their self-worth from the outcome of the situation. They know who they are. Their identity is anchored to their discipline, not their results. It's not about being perfect, it's about being relentless. Think about the world's most successful inventors or entrepreneurs. They don't have a better success rate than you. They simply have a drastically better failure rate. They fail more often, faster, and bigger. They are calm under the constant fire of setback because they have framed it correctly. For them, a massive failure is not a personal catastrophe, the narrative. It is simply a very expensive, very fast way to eliminate one option, the data. Failure is neutral. It is a required step. It is essential information. You don't need their permission to fail. You need to give yourself the command to view failure as feedback. When you treat failure as a neutral input, you instantly de-escalate any stressful situation. If you are about to make a risky pitch, the undisciplined mind says, "If I fail, I am a fraud." The disciplined mind says, "If this pitch is rejected, I will have learned exactly what the client does not want." That is the necessary information for the next, better pitch. Your instruction is to use failure as a diagnostic tool. When a failure occurs, a project bombs, you lose money, or an idea is dismissed, you must immediately activate the neutrality review after your 3-second lockdown. State the verdict. Declare internally, failure is neutral. Strip the emotion, write the data card again. Separate the facts from the feelings. Fact: the project lost $5,000. Fact: the code contains 3 major bugs. Fact: I miscalculated the timeline. Identify the gift. Ask one clarifying question. What is the single most valuable piece of information this mistake just handed me? The mistake is not the problem. The inability to extract the lesson from the mistake is the problem. It's not about running from accountability. It's about seizing intelligence. When you accept that failure is neutral, you stop wasting energy on defensiveness, self-pity, and blame. You take all the energy that used to fuel shame and redirect it into analysis and improvement. This is how the disciplined person generates massive leverage from setbacks. You have a choice. You can be the person who panics and stops at the first sign of failure, guaranteeing your result remains 0. Or you can be the person who moves through failure quickly and calmly, accelerating your learning curve. The true definition of staying calm under fire is maintaining your forward momentum when the outcome is guaranteed to be painful or negative. The only thing that allows this is the deep-seated knowledge that the pain is temporary, and the lesson is permanent. Failure is neutral. This concept is the ultimate risk management tool. When you remove the emotional penalty of failure, you become willing to take the smart, calculated risks required for massive success. You are no longer afraid to put your best effort forward, because you have detached your ego from the result. You don't need their permission to be steady in the face of loss. You need to anchor your self-worth to your effort and discipline, the process, not to the fluctuating results. The fear of failure keeps people quiet. It keeps them hidden. It makes them passive-aggressive and hesitant. The disciplined person makes fast decisions, acts decisively, and knows that if it doesn't work, failure is neutral. They just start the next attempt with better data. It's not about ignoring the consequences, it's about controlling the interpretation. Consequences are real. They are data. They are taxes, fines, or losses. But they are not the end of your story. They are simply the price paid for a lesson learned. Your emotional response to them is the only thing you truly control. You have now established the final pillar of your internal discipline. You no longer pay the panic tax. You embrace pressure. You ignore the noise. And you view failure as neutral. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are deciding your response to it. All of the lessons in this program, the pause, the data, the routine, the embrace of pressure, the neutrality of failure, must now be integrated. They must cease being tools you use and become the core identity you inhabit. The final transformation is the shift from trying to be calm to simply being the person who does not panic. This is the integration of the discipline into the self. In the final chapter, We will synthesize every lesson into a single cohesive, unshakable identity, the new default setting for your mind. Chapter 10. The Unshakable Identity. Calm is your new default. You have done the work. You have collected the tools. You have mastered the pause. You eliminate the but. You anchor to the routine. You see that failure is neutral. But this cannot remain a set of disconnected techniques. This is not a checklist you run through when a problem arises. That is relying on willpower. That is still reactive. Your final task is the integration. You must take the discipline to stay calm under fire and install it as a subconscious operating system. It must cease being a skill you use and become the core identity you inhabit. You are no longer someone trying to be calm. You are simply the person who does not panic. Your repetitive mantra for this final lesson is, "This is who you are now." An identity is simply a set of repeated, non-negotiable behaviors. When faced with fire, your default behavior must be discipline, not drama. It's not about acting calm, it's about being the authority. Every single principle we have covered must be fused into a single, cohesive, automatic response. This is the moment you stop fighting the chaos and start embodying the solution. You have a choice. You can slip back into the comfortable but catastrophic habits of the old you, or you can solidify the new you, the one who dominates the disaster. Let's look at the stark contrast in a specific high-stakes scenario, an unexpected, aggressive legal threat. The old you, reactive, explosive. The demand letter lands. The heart stops. 1 Mississippi is panic. 2 Mississippi is rage. 3 Mississippi is the phone call to the first person you can think of, seeking emotional relief. They pay the panic tax. They read the entire letter through the catastrophic narrative. This is unfair. This will ruin me. I am a victim. They spend the night rehearsing justifications, feeding the noise, and paying the panic tax of lost sleep and wasted mental cycles. Their actions are defensive, emotional, and ill-informed. The new you, steady, silent, dominant. The demand letter lands. They feel the familiar spike. They immediately say, "Lock it down for 3. 1 Mississippi is recognizing the fear. 2 Mississippi is refusing the emotional debt. 3 Mississippi is the pivot. They read the letter and kill the narrative. This is not ruin. It is just data. They set the deadline for distress for 15 minutes to review the facts and identify the single most critical domino, the single legal phrase that requires immediate action. They silence the noise of every well-meaning, panicked colleague. They anchor to the routine by executing their scheduled 6 a.m. workout, because their process is bigger than the problem. This is who you are now. Their next action is precise, a measured email to the lawyer with one clear question, demonstrating control, not fear. That's the key. The difference is not in the size of the fire. The difference is the default setting of the mind. The 3-second rule must become the subconscious guardrail. The data mindset must become your first language. The routine must be your unshakable terrain. You don't need their permission to be steady. You don't need the circumstance to be easy. You simply need to accept that this integrated discipline is now the baseline expectation for your behavior. It's not about never feeling fear, it's about making action the default. When you make action your default, you detach your discipline from your feelings. You don't need to feel brave to execute the plan. You only need to be the person who executes the plan, regardless of the internal feeling. This integrated identity brings an immense, silent power. The people around you will sense it. When they bring you chaos, they will feel their own panic dissipate in the face of your measured, slow-moving response. You become the unflappable anchor. The one person in the crisis whose voice is always a half-octave lower and a tempo slower than everyone else's. This creates confidence. It generates respect. It forces others to elevate their own performance to match your non-negotiable standard. This is who you are now. Your instruction for integration is radical self-monitoring. For the next 30 days, your single objective is to catch the old you slipping out, the moment of the snap judgment, the justified explosion, the wasted hour of worry. When you catch the slip, don't indulge in self-pity. That's the panic tax in disguise. Instead, declare, Incorrect program initiated. Restarting protocol now. And immediately pivot to the 3-second lockdown followed by the data card. This is how you burn out the old circuit and reinforce the new one. The integration means accepting the lessons. The crisis is never the problem. Your reaction is the problem. Your external results are fluctuating. Your internal discipline is constant. You are not defined by the outcome. You are defined by the process. The ultimate calm under fire is the calm of the inevitable. It is the calm of knowing that your response is predetermined by your discipline. You have already decided how you will act. The crisis simply gives you the stage to perform that decision. You have a choice. Live a life dictated by the panic tax, or execute a life of unwavering, dominant discipline. The final word is this: discipline is not optional when the stakes are high. It is your only defense. You have built this identity step by step. Now, live in it. Make it your new default. This is who you are now. The person who does not panic. The person who commands the fire. Listen closely. Your training is complete. The excuses are dead. The panic tax is cancelled. You have the discipline now. You know that calm is not a surrender to peace. It is the ultimate expression of power. You will be tested. The crisis will come. And when the fire breaks out, the weak will crumble and search for a victim. But you? You will look at the chaos, and you will see only data. You will lock it down for 3. You will anchor to your routine. You will eliminate the but. You will not pay the panic tax. Your identity is unshakable. You are the person who does not break. You are the immovable force in a moving world. Do not let this information be another audio file on your phone. This is your weapon. Now, stand up. Look at your life. Find the smallest piece of chaos, the smallest fire, and extinguish it right now with silent, cold, absolute calm. Go execute.